The desperate call. The crystalline spires of Cernus Prime reflected the light of the binary stars, creating an aurora of color that had once made the capital city famous throughout the sector. Now, those same spires stood fractured and burning, their beauty marred by the relentless orbital bombardment that had persisted for 18 days. Smoke billowed from countless impact sites, and the screams of the wounded echoed through streets once filled with song and celebration. High Chancellor Ilara Vin stood at the viewport of the last remaining government bunker, watching as another district of the city she loved burst into flames. The Cernithi people had never been warriors. For millennia, they had built their civilization on principles of art, science, and discovery. Their blue-scaled skin and luminescent eyes evolved in a world without large predators, allowing them to develop without the instinct for violence that drove so many other species. Chancellor, the latest casualty reports, said First Minister Thillo, his voice barely above a whisper as he handed her a data tablet. His normally vibrant scales had dulled to a sickly gray, a physiological response to extreme stress among their kind. Ilara took the tablet without looking at it. How many evacuation ships made it out? 3. The Kargan blockade destroyed 4 others. Thillo's voice cracked. We've lost contact with the southern continent entirely. The Kargan collective had appeared without warning at the edge of their system 19 days ago. There had been no declaration of war, no demands, no communication whatsoever, just the immediate commencement of a methodical extermination campaign. The Cernithi Defense Force, maintained primarily for ceremony and minor policing actions, had been obliterated within hours. What of our allies? Ilara asked, though she already knew the answer. The Jorvian Federation regrets that intervention would violate their neutrality protocols. The Kreskin Empire claims their treaty obligations do not extend to conflicts of this magnitude. The Beltor Commonwealth has recalled their ambassador and closed their borders. Thillo's fin-like ears flattened against his skull in shame. They all abandoned us. The bunker shook as another barrage struck nearby. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the emergency lighting flickered momentarily before stabilizing. We have perhaps 3 days before their ground forces reach this bunker, said Defense Minister Cowran, the only military official left in their hierarchy. Their dropships continue to land more troops in the outlying regions. Ilara had never felt such despair. The Cernithi numbered nearly 11 billion across their homeworld and 3 colony planets. Within weeks, they faced extinction, and not a single species among their supposed allies would lift a finger to help them. Chancellor, called a hesitant voice from the communication station. Ilara turned to see Naira, a young specialist who had been monitoring what remained of their interstellar network. There may be one option we haven't considered. Speak freely, Ilara said, approaching the station. The humans. The word hung in the air like a strange incantation. Humanity was the newest spacefaring species in the known galaxy. They had achieved faster-than-light travel barely 47 years ago, and their initial contact with the galactic community had been cautious and limited. Unlike most species who eagerly shared their cultural achievements and technological capabilities upon making first contact, humans had been remarkably reticent. They maintained small embassies on a handful of worlds, engaged in modest trade agreements, and generally kept to themselves. Some speculated they were simply a primitive species lucky enough to discover FTL technology before developing more advanced science. Others whispered darker theories, that humans were hiding something. The humans have no treaties with us, Thillo objected. No obligations. They've barely established diplomatic relations with the major powers, let alone a minor civilization like ours. But they also have no treaties with the Kargans, Naira countered. And they're the only significant spacefaring species that hasn't explicitly refused to help us. Ilara frowned, considering this unlikely possibility. What do we actually know about human military capability? Would they even have the power to challenge the Kargan fleet if they wanted to? The room fell silent. The truth was, nobody knew. Humans had shared little about their homeworld or military strength. Their ships were utilitarian in design, revealing nothing of their technological sophistication or weapons capabilities. They participated minimally in galactic affairs and seemed content to observe rather than engage. "It doesn't matter," Naira said finally. "We have nothing left to lose." Ilara looked around at the remaining members of her government, the last leadership of a dying species. The young specialist was right. They had exhausted every other option. "Prepare a message," she commanded. "Not a formal diplomatic request. Those have failed us repeatedly. Send a direct appeal, in plain language, explaining exactly what's happening. Tell them we face extinction. Ask for any help they can provide." The communications team worked quickly, crafting a simple but desperate plea. "To the government and people of Earth, we are the Cernethi. The Kargan Collective is systematically destroying our civilization. 11 billion lives face extinction. All our allies have abandoned us. If you can help in any way, please respond. This may be our final transmission." The message was broadcast on all frequencies, using the coordinates of the small human embassy that had been established in a neighboring system 3 years earlier. No one in the bunker harbored much hope. Why would humans, with their limited presence in galactic affairs, choose to intervene when far more powerful civilizations had declined? Hours passed. The bombardment intensified. Systems failed one by one across the bunker. Evacuation plans were prepared for the government officials, though few believed escape was possible with the Kargan blockade in place. "Chancellor," Naira's voice suddenly cut through the grim silence. "We're receiving a response. It's from Earth." The command center fell silent as every eye turned toward the communications display. Ilara straightened her posture, ignoring the pain of injuries sustained days earlier. "Put it through." The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the human face. The being had dark skin and close-cropped hair, with features that Ilara's limited knowledge of human physiology couldn't identify as distinctly male or female. They wore a simple gray uniform with minimal insignia. "This is Admiral Marcus Chen of the United Earth Defense Force," the human stated without preamble. Their voice was calm and measured, with none of the diplomatic hesitation Ilara had expected. "We have received your distress call and verified the situation through our intelligence networks. Help is coming." Ilara blinked in disbelief. No expressions of sympathy. No questions about what Earth might gain from intervention. No diplomatic hedging. Just a simple statement that help was coming, as if it were the most natural response in the world. "Admiral," Ilara managed after a moment. We are grateful, but you should understand the gravity of our situation. The Kargans have over 300 warships in our system. They are the most dominant military force in this sector of the galaxy." The human's expression didn't change. "I am aware of the Kargan Collective's general capabilities. Please transmit all tactical data regarding their fleet positions and your remaining defensive assets. Our advance forces will arrive within 10 hours. Ilara exchanged glances with her advisors, all wearing expressions of shock. 10 hours. Even with the most advanced FTL drives known to the galactic community, the nearest human outpost was at least 2 days' journey. 10 hours is impossible, Defense Minister Kaurin said, stepping forward. "No species possesses drives capable of." "We do," Admiral Chen interrupted. 10 hours. Be ready. Chen out." The transmission ended, leaving the Cernathi leadership staring at each other in stunned silence. Could they really have such advanced FTL technology? Thelo whispered. "It doesn't matter," Ilara said firmly. "Send them everything we have. All Kargan positions, all tactical data. If there's even the slightest chance they're coming, they'll need it." The next 9 hours were a blur of continued bombardment, failing systems, and desperate coordination of the few remaining Cernathi defense outposts. Few in the bunker truly believed help would arrive, but the humans' promise had given them something to focus on beyond imminent death. When the proximity alarm sounded, everyone assumed it was yet another wave of Kargan attackers. New contacts. Called the sensor operator. Voice rising in pitch. Massive energy signatures. Numerous vessels dropping out of FTL directly in system. Kargan reinforcements. Ilara asked grimly. No. Unknown configuration. They're coming in behind a Kargan fleet. Hundreds of them. The tactical display updated, showing a swarm of new signatures appearing as if from nowhere. Not dozens of ships as they had desperately hoped, but hundreds. The vessels were smaller than the massive Kargan dreadnoughts, but there were so many of them, emerging in perfect formation. It's them, Naira breathed. It's the humans. They're hailing us, the communications officer reported. Put it through, Ilara ordered, heart pounding. Admiral Chen's face appeared again, still impassive, though Ilara thought she detected a hint of cold determination in those alien eyes. Chancellor Vin, the human said, this is Admiral Chen. The United Earth Defense Fleet has arrived. We'll handle the Kargan vessels. Please direct all remaining civilians to shelter immediately. This is going to get messy. Humanity unleashed. The tactical display in the Cernathi command bunker showed what should have been impossible. The human fleet moving with coordinated precision that defied conventional understanding of space combat. Their ships were indeed smaller than the Kargan dreadnoughts, but they moved with startling agility, darting between the larger vessels in formations that seemed to anticipate every countermeasure. What are we seeing? Ilara whispered, watching as the first Kargan ships began to explode. Defense Minister Kaurin shook his head in disbelief. Their weapons, their penetrating Kargan shields as if they weren't even there. And those maneuvers, no sentient pilot could withstand those G-forces. The human ships employed tactics unlike anything the Cernathi had ever witnessed. They didn't maintain distance and exchange fire, as was standard practice in interstellar combat. Instead, they closed to point-blank range, weaving between the massive Kargan vessels with what appeared to be reckless abandon. Chancellor, called the communications officer, Admiral Chen is requesting a direct link to our command center. Moments later, the holographic display expanded to show the interior of what appeared to be the human flagship's bridge. Admiral Chen stood calmly amid a flurry of activity, other humans working at various stations with practiced efficiency. Chancellor Vin, Chen acknowledged with a slight nod. We've neutralized the first wave of Kargan vessels. Our ground forces are deploying to engage their troops on the surface. Admiral, we don't know how to thank you. Ilara began, still struggling to process the rapid turn of events. Save your thanks for after we've secured your system. Chen replied matter-of-factly. I'd like to send a delegation to your command bunker to coordinate our efforts. Before Ilara could respond, a new voice spoke from off-screen. Admiral, Kargan command ship attempting to break orbit. 3 dreadnoughts forming escort pattern. Chen nodded without looking away from the transmission. Carrier groups 2 and 4, intercept and disable. I want that command ship intact if possible. Ilara watched in astonishment as the tactical display showed 2 groups of human vessels breaking formation and accelerating toward the fleeing Kargan command ship. The precision of their movements was unlike anything she had ever seen. Your ships move as if they're a single organism, she observed. Something like pride flickered across Chen's face. Networked swarm intelligence combined with human intuition. Each vessel has a human commander, but our systems allow us to function as a collective when necessary. We've found it particularly effective against hierarchical command structures like the Kargans. Within 30 minutes, a human shuttle had landed near the government bunker, and Ilara found herself face to face with Commander Sophia Reyes, a small but imposing human female who served as Admiral Chen's ground operations chief. Chancellor, Reyes greeted her with a brief but respectful inclination of her head. My teams are already engaging Kargan ground forces across your northern continent. We expect to have them contained within 6 hours. Commander, forgive my directness, Ilara said, but why are you helping us? No other species would intervene. Reyes's expression softened slightly. 2 reasons, Chancellor. First, humanity remembers what it's like to stand alone against overwhelming odds. Our history is filled with such moments. She paused, something dark and ancient flickering in her eyes. Second, we've been monitoring the Kargan Collective since we entered this sector. Their pattern of expansion threatened to eventually reach human space. You provided an opportunity for us to engage them on our terms rather than theirs. An opportunity, Thela repeated, thin ears twitching with sudden understanding. You used our distress call as a pretext to attack an enemy you already intended to confront. Yes and no, Rise responded without apology. We would have eventually confronted the Kargans, true. But your call accelerated our timetable. The extinction of your species was unacceptable to us on moral grounds alone. As they spoke, the tactical displays continued to show Kargan ships being systematically neutralized throughout the system. The humans fought with a combination of advanced technology and tactics that seemed to border on recklessness, yet clearly followed some internal logic that the Cernethi couldn't grasp. You should know, Rice continued, that we've already dispatched additional fleets to your colony worlds. The Kargan forces there will be eliminated within 48 hours. Ilara exchanged shocked glances with her advisors. You have enough ships to simultaneously engage in multiple star systems. A small, enigmatic smile crossed Rice's face. Chancellor, what you're seeing is approximately 8% of our active combat fleet. The implications of that statement hung in the air like a physical presence. If this was merely a fraction of human military power, why had they maintained such a minimal presence in galactic affairs? Why had they appeared so reticent, so unassuming in their diplomatic engagements? As if reading her thoughts, Rice said, Humanity learned long ago that advertising our capabilities tends to create more problems than it solves. We prefer to be underestimated. 3 days later, the last Kargan vessel in the Cernathi system surrendered. The human fleet had lost 17 ships, a number that Admiral Chen described as acceptable casualties, with a stoicism that both impressed and disturbed the Cernathi leadership. In the aftermath, as reconstruction efforts began, Ilara found herself standing with Admiral Chen amidst the ruins of what had once been the Grand Plaza of Cernus Prime. Human medical teams worked alongside Cernathi healers, treating the wounded. Human engineers had already begun helping restore critical infrastructure. I still don't fully understand why, Ilara admitted, watching a group of human soldiers distributing supplies to displaced civilians. Other species considered us expendable. Even our supposed allies abandoned us when the Kargans attacked. Chen was silent for a moment, watching the scene before them. Humanity has a complicated history, Chancellor. For thousands of years, we fought ourselves more often than any external threat. We nearly destroyed ourselves multiple times. The Admiral turned to meet Ilara's gaze directly. When we finally achieved unity and looked to the stars, we made a collective decision about what kind of species we wanted to be. And what decision was that? Ilara asked. That we would never stand by and watch another sentient species face extinction when we had the power to prevent it. Chen's voice had lost some of its military precision, revealing something deeper. No matter how different, no matter how distant, we know too well what it means to face annihilation alone. As they spoke, news arrived that human forces had successfully liberated the first Cernathi colony world, evacuating civilians and driving back Kargan forces with the same ruthless efficiency they had demonstrated at Cernus Prime. The Galactic Concord will have questions about this intervention, Ilara noted. They've maintained strict non-interference policies for centuries. Chen's expression hardened slightly. Let them question. Humanity joined the Concord, but we never surrendered our principles to its politics. We will not apologize for preventing genocide. In the days that followed, representatives from species that had rejected Cernathi pleas for help arrived one by one, offering belated condolences and aid. They were received cordially, but without warmth. The human presence, meanwhile, expanded as reconstruction ships arrived, bringing specialists and resources. A month after the initial human intervention, Ilara stood in the newly reconstructed Cernithi council chamber. Before her were assembled her own advisors and a delegation of humans, including Admiral Chen. Today, we formalize a mutual defense pact between the Cernithi Confederation and the United Earth Government, Ilara announced. Our species will forever remember that when all others abandoned us, humanity answered our call. As the documents were signed, Admiral Chen approached Ilara privately. You should know that this will change things for your people, the Admiral said quietly. Your association with us will be noticed. Not everyone in the galaxy appreciates our methods or our principles. Ilara's normally blue scales rippled with determination, regaining some of their former luster. Then let them take notice. The Cernithi were a people of art and science because we had the luxury of peace. We've learned that such luxury requires guardians. She looked directly at the human. Perhaps it's time the galaxy learned what it means when humanity answers a call for help. Chen's normally stoic expression broke into a small but genuine smile. Indeed, Chancellor, that's a lesson some have been reluctant to learn. But they will. Outside the chamber windows, human ships hovered protectively above the rebuilding city, a silent promise that the Cernithi would never stand alone again.